This week on a lively experiment, a former governor weighs in about his successor with some pointed words about her performance. What's his end game? Plus, a professor from the Naval War College weighs in on President Trump's choice for National Security Advisor.
A Lively Experiment is generously underwritten by
the Rhode Island Foundation, partnering with passionate Rhode Islanders to lead, transform, and inspire our state. Learn more at rhodeislandfoundation.org.
John Hazenwhite's Lookout, educating Rhode Islanders about the most important issues facing the Ocean State today.
Joining us on this week's panel, Ed Acorn, editor of the editorial pages at the Providence Journal. Donna Perry, public affairs spokesperson for RICPA Society. Brown University political science professor Wendy Schiller. And Pat Ford, chairman of the Rhode Island Libertarian Party. Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Lively Experiment. I'm Jim Hummel. We appreciate you joining us this week. You might call it the curious reemergence of Lincoln Chafee. Over the past couple of weeks, the former governor has done several local and national media interviews offering some support for President Trump and some pointed criticism for Governor Raimondo, who continues to be dogged by the UHIP computer scandal. More on that in a moment, but first let's talk about Chafee. I don't know if this is he's bored or he's getting looking to make a comeback. Wendy, what do you make of his being all over the place now?
Well, I think he wants to be heard. I mean, nobody can doubt Link Chafee's dedication to Rhode Island. You can criticize his performance as a senator or a governor, but you can't say the guy hasn't been dedicated to the state of Rhode Island, and he's got things to say, and he wants to weigh in, and so he's weighing in. I mean, he's entitled to his free speech like everybody else.
Is he testing the water for a comeback, or you think this is just, I need to speak?
I think every politician thinks maybe they can win again in some way, shape, or form. But I think right now he's just trying to find a voice and be another voice of accountability for Gina Raimondo and other elected officials.
I would just say he never disappoints, and true to form, a lot of puzzling observations, I would say, and kind of this puzzling alignment. Chafee and Trump was kind of a surprise.
You don't think he's looking for a cabinet position, do you?
Who knows what he's looking for? I think what I question, though, Wendy, is the timing. Like, what is, at this moment? Like, what is the jumping in? What is the testing the waters? And I think it showed that, true to form, he kind of holds grudges. I mean, he bothered to mention how the CNN treated him in his 15 minutes of running for president in a debate, and something like, I only got 8 minutes in their 2-hour four. I mean, it's kind of like silly. It's like, what? Okay.
Let go, right?
But
what do you think, Ed?
He does hold grudges, but I think he just wants some attention. I think he wants something to do with his life still, and I think he would consider running for governor if he had a chance to do that. I think it's sad that Governor Raimondo's in so much hot water, because I think she's doing a lot of things that he didn't bother to get around to doing.
He's 64, so clearly he's still relatively young. But every time you hear Link Chafee, it's former mayor, former senator, former governor, and I think that kind of grates on him because he wants to be in the mix.
To me, what's interesting is the juxtaposition of both of their performance levels. What now, at the time, seemed incredibly annoying. His obsession with Christmas trees can be regarded as merely quirky when you compare to the incredible failures of the Raimondo administration.
Is Link Chafee making Gina Raimondo look like what? Gina Raimondo's making Link Chafee look like Bruce Sundlun,
Where
right?
have you gone, Link Chafee? Rhode Island turns its lonely eyes to you. Raimondo is just such an abject failure as a governor on so many different levels. I found it interesting that Chafee, in retrospect, was right on so many things. Remember, a great deal of the success regarding the 38 Studios civil lawsuits is a direct function of Link Chafee. Link Chafee is right about the Commerce Corporation. They're hopelessly out of control. They spend way too much money, and he called Raimondo on the card for that. So, you look at her performance, minus the political hoopla that seems to always surround her by her spin machine, and I take Link Chafee in a heartbeat right now as governor.
Oh, I disagree.
Yeah.
Chafee really didn't do much of anything as governor. This state's in terrible shape.
But is
we
that
have the worst business climate in the country. We have terrible public schools. We have to do something to change this. And also, the whole infrastructure of the government was in terrible shape. I mean, at least Gina Romano's doing some things to try to turn this around. Now, I admit the UHIP thing, we've written about this, the UHIP thing was an absolute disaster, and she put incompetence sort of running the departments.
Yeah, but if Chafee wants to get in this game, I mean, these guys live out Groundhog Day because 38 began with him and then okay. So now you have UHIP. The contract was forged under him, and Richard Leach was the director of administration. So I would love to see this forensic audit or this audit investigation, which I think it's like way late and this should happen. And if I was Raimondo's team, you know, if Chafee wants to talk about how things came together in the crafting of this clearly contract that's a mess with the state of Rhode Island, UHIP goes back to him, his administration. So I think before he gets a little too cute, you know, and I don't agree with everything she's done, but
he said Deloitte was doing great when he was there.
You know.
I think the bigger problem for Gina Raimondo, I actually think, is not necessarily, I think the administrative problems and the cost overruns are a problem. The bigger problem is you're trying to bring Rhode Island into the 21st century. You're trying to instill in people confidence and faith in technology, for example, or retraining high school kids, or people who don't go to college, vocational education, technology, that's all we keep hearing about. And in fact, the government was in charge of technology and it failed, and the oversight failed, and the private company failed. So persuading Rhode Islanders that this is the path to better economic prosperity is going to be a tough sell if you can't even do it right in the government. And that, to me, is the biggest obstacle for her.
If you look to her incursion, if you will, of private industry into Rhode Island Community College, and particularly with one has to question why her obsession with STEM seems to overcome every angle of a liberal arts education or the development of critical thinking among students. But getting back to the original point, there's a lot of fluff there. There's a lot of, we brought in GE, 100 jobs at how much money? We brought in the XY Corporation at how much money? People keep looking at success as what she's trying to do. She's been a miserable failure.
I just think it's way too, first of all, it's way too early to make that kind of strident pronouncement about a governorship 2 years in. To say that she's failed, I mean, there are macro factors that are better than they were when she came in. We don't necessarily attribute credit to her for that. You can't say that she's a failure yet. You can say that there have been particular failures that get in the way of her ultimate goals of success. That's one of the problems. But she is revamping state government, and I've been very critical of the slowness of those revamps, but they are starting to show some fruition in some departments. So I just think it's too early to say that she's been a failure.
But if you look at the DMV, if you look at UHIP, if you look at the Commerce Corporation, tell me about a success.
Chafee was the one who revamped
but
the DMV.
not cooler and warmer.
And I would just say, to the point of technology, though, Pat, it's not her obsession. This is what corporations and industries are telling
we can't go back to the pen and quill.
You don't have
for social services.
You need to raise the workforce. Why do you think Boston is the engine it is? Because MIT and all these things fuel it. And to be fair to her,
they're operating at a completely different level than what she's trying to accomplish with Rhode Island Community College.
But what she's trying to do is raise the work. I mean, to be fair to her, Chafee never uttered a coherent sentence that connected workforce training to strategic job industries. He just didn't. I don't think he ever said a coherent sentence.
You're right. He wasn't as articulate.
The focus, the substance. She's bringing focus and substance to these are long simmering problems in Rhode Island.
But Chafee did, in all fairness, and going to Pat's point, Chafee did say eds and meds was probably our strongest way.
Well, they gave him a talking point, so we ran around.
No, I mean, I think he believed it. I think he thought. I mean, I don't think he had the foresight and the plan to make it happen, but I do think that he started that conversation and he launched that. I think, in fairness to him.
This is the first time we've had this panel on since the whole UHIP thing, and we talked a little about this last week. What stunned me was, the governor's trying to work on parallel lines, bringing in Wexford and all these other things, but she said this could not. It might take a year to get this solved. And I wonder your thoughts. You're generally supportive of some of what she's done. Does this continue to have backsplash? I mean, it will at the first of every month. And how does she work on those parallel lines to show people I'm getting the job done, although UHIP's not doing it?
It's almost impossible at this point. I mean, it's terrible. And you need a strong management implementing a $360 million computer system, and they had nobody in IT essentially watching it. It's incredible. They had nobody running these departments that they knew anything about management, really. I mean, they were political appointees.
It's obscene, the amount of money that's gone into that, and I would agree with you that it falls on her. I get that. The way the change orders have gone through, she clearly didn't have the tech, she didn't have an IT person with the skill set to match Deloitte, who I think by a lot of accounts is taking the state. I mean, there's national reporting. Rhode Island is like their best project right now. You know, their most expensive project. I mean, you can look it up. Ken Block has made some great observations that it's very unfortunate. And I think on our side, we didn't have the tech expertise to match what they're saying. They didn't, supposedly they never give Rhode Island enough time to do what they call testing. When you do a major upgrade on something like this, you need 30 days. Ken Block has written about this. They're using not industry standard time frames. They would give them 10 days to run tests on massive amounts of information. I'm certainly not a tech expert, but just some observations. So yeah, it falls on her, but my point is, the other thing that's hurting her in all this is this issue keeps stepping on some of her own better headlines. You know, you had the Innovation Campus thing came out this week. That was through a state bond. That's a very important, good direction. They're trying to bring more research to URI. I think it's a URI matched thing. But it's all these, her good headlines are stepped on by every week. It's another hiccup.
You know, I thought Donald Trump got up and had one of those rallies. We'll get to Trump in a minute. He had one of those rallies because he loves it and the adoring crowds. Gina Raimondo was taking a page out of that almost on this free college tuition tour. She keeps going. She gets out of the State House, and of course, the students are going to love it. And I wonder, you know, I don't know if we've had you on the panel since she talked about that. With the free college tuition, that's not on the speaker's radar. So as much as she wants to, I mean, he's downplayed that, and as much as it sounds like a great idea, I'm not sure that's something she wants to keep putting time into.
I think we want to clarify exactly what it is. It's for your junior and senior years, your third and fourth years. You have a long road ahead to get there. Right. So you go to community college, you can go to state college, but you have to successfully complete your first and second years. That takes money. That takes taking out loans. So it's not as if it's really giving people an immediate pathway. It's an incentive. But I think when you're thinking about college and you think, I can't afford 4 years of college, now you're a sophomore in high school or a junior in high school, and you think, well, maybe now I only have to afford 2 years of college if I do well, which is it's a trickle-down effect in high schools. It will make people think a little bit more about going to college.
But how do you feel about your tax dollars as your Rhode Islander paying for that?
Education is one of the most essential things I'm willing to pay for. And it's not that everybody should go to college. I'd be concerned if everything was focused on college and not on vocational training or computer training or tech training for people who don't want to go to college. You don't want to throw all your resources just to college. However, I think if you're going to take my money and you want to spend it on education for Rhode Island students to go to college or to be trained in vocational education, I'll pay it.
The state should be paying more for higher education, clearly.
Those budgets,
they're not up there with the other states.
Yeah.
But we've got this K through 12 system that's almost a disaster. I don't know if people saw it, but her great education reform plan, empowerment schools, only 2 to 3 schools expressed an interest in it. That's not going to get us anywhere. And there's a whole generations of these kids, especially poor and minority kids, that are not getting a good education in Rhode Island.
Let me just throw out, though, she presented to the Rhode Island Business Coalition, and our organization's part of that. What was very striking to me, though, Rhode Island has among the lowest rates of anyone getting through even a 2-year community college, never mind URI, in the 4-year or 2-year time frame.
URI President Dave Dooley
said, 15%.
Dave Dooley said it's not a college entrance problem, it's a college completion problem.
Right. Now, but let's
and it's money.
Let's get to the political motivations of this. To your question, I'm not even convinced she expects this to win. I'm not even convinced she expects this to go. To me, this is nothing but a sop being thrown to the political progressive movement of the Democratic Party in order to maintain her political viability. I'm convinced she almost doesn't care if it goes through.
Well, and then if it doesn't go through, then it's on the speaker?
Exactly. So, I mean, in terms of political moves, it's genius, because then she can go and say, I tried, but that legislature, they just wouldn't work with me. I tried. And here's the issue. The political progressives get it. They understand that she's basically trying to, I don't know, patronize them. But to the program itself, You're right in saying that the funding should be going to the college. It shouldn't be going to the individual student. The entire structure of our program is critically flawed. I'm a libertarian. I don't believe in means testing, but the notion that my tax dollars has the potential to pay for an upper middle class or a wealthy student's last 2 years of college is absolute lunacy. And I think it's going to put incredible pressure both on the University of Rhode Island and the Community College of Rhode Island for facilities.
Some of us have said, get the community college right first. Why not run a pilot program attempt at this? I mean,
in effect, K through 14.
Paying
right?
for
Get
community college is going on around the country. Sure. There's mixed results, but I don't know. But URI, I think, wants to grab this while they see it in front of them, and
also, but the kids going into the community college, I think something like 70% of them need remedial
help. Yeah.
Right. So K through 14. Let's get it right.
K through 12 isn't even working, and we got to get that fixed.
The one thing, we have a couple other issues to want to move on to. Wendy, you and I were talking off camera before the show about the perception that Rhode Islanders have of the economy. You know, nationally, the stock market's booming, unemployment's low, Trump's riding in, and I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that, because we're still kind of, Rhode Islanders are still kind of, where's the economy going? Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think people internalize what's for the future, and if you thought that your kids could have a better future, or you thought that you would move up if you're in your 30s or your 40s, and you're seeing that your wages aren't changing over a decade, and you're not moving up, you start to get this pessimism about the economy. Even though you're employed, you're doing okay, you think the future isn't bright. So I think it's really, absorbing the concerns about the future, and particularly about your kids. And I think a lot of Rhode Island families want their kids to be able to stay in Rhode Island, to be able to find a job and settle down here. And I think that perception is that there isn't any opportunity here. So I think it's the idea of a good paying job, and that is very much tied to the changes in the economy, technology, new skill sets, and that's the problem. You're playing catch up everywhere, and the impression is we're never going to catch up. There's too much work to be done.
A lot of us are in that boat. Will our kids come back after college?
And my two won't. And my two are going to, let's just say, prestigious universities. But here's the problem with Gina Raimondo's plan. Her plan is geared towards making our youth technicians, essentially. It's not geared towards addressing the core educational issues, which are so important and reflective of a liberal arts education. Critical thinking is not part of her plan. As a cynic, and having spoken to a number of CCRI professors about this very subject, my fear is that she is basically trying to turn out low-wage technical workers who see coding as a gateway to a future, when in fact that bus left the station 20 years ago.
You cynical? Is that possible?
But I disagree. So in our state, why is the New England Institute of Technology, which is a private school, thriving? They had to add dorms. It's based in East Greenwich. It is growth, and many of the students are coming from all over the region. So I just disagree.
Well, a lot of programs aren't just purely technical. They've got a very strong automotive program. I work in the automotive industry, and so again,
But every industry is attached to technical expertise up to a certain point. Manufacturing, everything.
But if you're looking to address the core problems, as Mr. Acorn discussed, in terms of staying in school, all right, it has everything to do with the ability to generate critical thinking skills at an earlier level, not just turning into people who can type into a computer.
Right.
All right, we shift to some national news. President Trump picked his second national security advisor after General Flynn, our own Rhode Island General Mike Flynn, resigned. He appointed General McMaster, who is, by all accounts, very well known within the community. We decided to talk to Naval War College professor Mark Jeunesse this week, who follows these things, and hear his thoughts not only on General McMaster, about what to look for in the Trump foreign policy in the coming weeks and months.
General McMaster is, again, a long-serving member of the U.S. Army, was very good at counterinsurgency strategy in Iraq, particularly. What I like about him most is that he's unafraid to speak up and to challenge his civilian leadership. This is the kind of thing that we need. He is the perfect person to be National Security Advisor for President Trump. The man has a tremendous amount of experience. Remember, we've been in war now since 2001. This man has been on the ground in Iraq and Afghanistan for multiple tours. He knows what's going on, and he's got that perfect combination of scholar and soldier. And to put him together with General Mattis, one of the great soldiers of our time, a great Marine, and with General Kelly, another great Marine, you're talking about three individuals who have a reputation for telling you what it's like, as it is, not sugarcoating it, and being unafraid to tell you exactly what they think. These are the perfect three individuals that I would choose to help President Trump in his presidency.
What will you be looking to see as benchmarks in the next week, 2 or month?
A coherent strategic narrative that puts U.S. policies in a grander context. What is the United States' primary aims? What does President Trump want to accomplish in international politics? You're seeing this right now in Iraq and Syria, where President Trump, or candidate Trump, talked about destroying ISIS. And now he's given Mattis a 30-day period to come up with a strategic plan to at least severely weaken ISIS. And we see this happening on the ground now. There's talk about more American troops in Syria. There's talk about expanding our targeting for bombing, and perhaps expanding our role on the ground in Iraq. All of these are focused on really either destroying or severely weakening ISIS.
So, of course, presidents are elected on their domestic policy, and, Professor, a lot of people always wonder what's their foreign policy going to be. Look, Barack Obama, George Bush, and Bill Clinton were equally not really well versed. They had to grow on the job. I think a lot of people are looking, what are the pieces and the players that Donald Trump's going to put in place? And from what I've read and what Professor Jeunesse said, a pretty good team that he's putting in place.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that with the Flynn exception, because I think the Flynn scandal with Russia and Flynn's general comportment was not what you wanted in the national security. The good news here is that Trump sees a problem, or his staff sees a problem, and he's decisive. He, got rid of Flynn quickly, and he has now put somebody else in place that is generally fairly welcomed by everybody. And you have to have your principles working well together. The Secretary of DEF, the Homeland Security, and the Secretary of State, and the National Security Advisor have to work together as a team. Even under Ronald Reagan, there were some conflicts, and that always interfered with foreign policy. So that they're a team that looks like they can work together is a very good start moving forward.
I think this team would have fit with Hillary Clinton. And what's interesting is this kind of a good cop, bad cop thing going on here with foreign policy. Trump says these outlandish things, and then sort of these mainstream people go out and correct him a little bit. But Trump moves the ball a little bit. We saw this with NATO. He's screaming about our involvement with NATO, and now they're talking about, okay, maybe we'll kick in a little more for our own defense.
Yeah, I think what you're seeing play out a little bit is Trump is very masterful media-wise, always conscious of his base, but then maybe letting his people do kind of the more traditional, whether it's diplomatic and security advising roles. And that might be, the template you're going to see.
I think Trump's schizophrenic approach on NATO is damaging. The notion that you've got this out-of-control president spouting whatever he's literally seen on Fox News a half hour before as being an appropriate way to conduct a foreign policy is hideous. I think we all understand at this table, and your listeners know that foreign policy is not conducted on Twitter. Foreign policy is a series of conversations held in private, not because of a desire to hide it, but because of the, shall we say, the different influences that each respective national foreign leader has to deal with on their home country.
And you wonder if, Mark Jeunesse talked about this, these guys are their own guys. You wonder if they're at some point going to say, with all due respect, Mr. President, cut it out.
Calm down on Twitter.
It's bigger than this.
Well, his respect for the military is going to bode well in that respect. However, I probably gave this question to you, but everybody. Now, traditionally, George Washington put Hamilton in charge of the Secretary of Treasury. Hamilton was a general in the Army also, I believe, or a high-ranking officer. So we have 3 generals, and typically you have civilian control of the Department of Defense. So we've got a lot of military people running a civilian operation, and I trust that they have the best interests of the nation at heart, and they're well experienced, but it is different from prior experiences in terms of administration.
And my concern is that the autocratic nature of the military training, that they're clearly wonderful Americans, are patriots. McMaster's got an incredible story about tank battles he's literally been involved in, but the autocratic nature, the single top-down decision-making process, I don't think works well in a foreign policy environment.
Okay, let's go to outrages. Mr. Acorn, what are you outraged about this week?
Well, I consider baseball almost a religion, so I'm not.
Oh, I've heard that.
I'm not happy with this getting rid of pitching for an intentional walk.
That you don't have to do the 4.
You don't have to throw the 4 pitches, because sometimes people throw wild pitches and sometimes batters hit sacrifice.
And they're trying to speed up the game. What would that save? 42 seconds?
This doesn't save any time. This happens once every 2.5 games, and it's ridiculous. If they want to save time, maybe cut down some of the commercials, which they'll never do.
Baseball's got a tougher image, though. Yeah. You and I grew up watching day games, and it was kind of our religion.
Yeah.
A lot of kids are checked out now. I mean, they've got a big problem for the next generation.
They got to speed it up. They got to speed it up. Have the pitchers throw the ball and have the batter stand in the box and hit the ball.
Okay, Donna, what's your outrage?
On the transgender bathroom issue, I'm not going to wade too much into that, but it's more of the public dialogue and some of the way the media is presenting this issue that I have a bit of a problem with. There's a complicated undercurrent when you're talking about children, and I don't want anyone to get crazy at me out there. I'm not talking about adults making their own choice on this, but when you're talking about an 11-year-old or a 12-year-old going into a middle school or a high school, the American Academy of Pediatrics last year issued an 8-point bulletin about this whole thing. Gender dysphoria is a true medical condition, and I think that school, whether you're a Department of Ed or a school committee or a superintendent, you have to tread carefully on this. And I think that to portray that this is Trump and discrimination against trans children, and I have a problem with that term. I think that's actually not matching what is reality of a young person. I just think the way this is being handled in some of the media doesn't mention the medical component, and that the pediatric community has spoken out about this, and you're not seeing that in the reporting. And I think it's a bigger picture story, and it's just a shame that adults need to be adults around kids who have these issues.
All right, thank you, Donna. Wendy, what's your outrage?
You're going to be surprised by this, I think. My outrage is the enormous number of leaks coming from the Trump administration across the board. Look,
the president has some problems with that, too.
No, that's true. But, I mean, I understand the concern of the intelligence agencies. They don't trust this president. They don't trust Steve Bannon. They don't trust. So they're worried. They're intelligence shopping. Oh, find us some incidents where people from countries that we want to ban committed acts of terrorism. Let's expand the definition. And the intelligence community is like, you're asking us to perjure ourselves. We're not going to do that. I shouldn't be hearing about that at this point in time, because government has to have some semblance of confidentiality to function. Whatever, I'm not talking about secrecy and denying the American people open truth, but you can't have as many leaks as you're having and have government work efficiently. So something's got to stop on that realm. I don't know how we work that out, but there are just way too many leaks coming out of this.
Security, I fully
agree.
agree.
Especially in the areas that the leaks are coming from.
Exactly. Pat, what's your
Invenergy, a 200-plus acre industrial bomb in the form of a power plant that's being dropped in one of the most pristine parts of Rhode Island. It has no demonstrated commercial need, as we found out with ISO New England last week. It's adjacent to a public drinking water supply. Local control has been stripped completely from the town of Burrillville and put into this quasi-judicial agency called an Energy Siting Board, to which one of my callers referred to as 38 power plant, not because of public subsidies, but because of this bizarre process that seems to take place without any public input at all, despite the fact that over 30 communities from 3 different states' town councils who typically can't even agree on a stop sign have voted in favor of opposing this power plant.
What's the over-under on it going forward at this point?
It's a mixed bag. It's supported by a governor who, by the way, has taken campaign contributions from its CEO, who rolled out the welcome mat. I don't know, it's 50-50 because, and these folks' way of life, their lifestyles, and they feel their families' future health is at stake.
But you've got to have energy.
No, actually we don't.
Well, you do.
No, because in ISO New England last week,
you got to turn on the lights and they have to work.
Last week, 2 weeks ago, when ISO New England put it up for auction.
I'm saying no one would ever permit a power plant to be built anywhere.
Let's build one on Blackstone Boulevard.
All right, boys, we're going to have to take this out. As much as I would love to discuss Invenergy for the next half hour, you boys can take it out on the street, because that is all the time we have. We appreciate you joining us, Ed and Wendy and Donna and Pat. Always lively. And thank you for joining us this week. Come back here next week when Ed and Pat may still be discussing this. But either way, the Lively Experiment continues. Have a great weekend, everybody.
A Lively Experiment is generously underwritten by
the Rhode Island Foundation, partnering with passionate Rhode Islanders to lead, transform, and inspire our state. Learn more at rhodeislandfoundation.org.
John Hazenwhite's Lookout, educating Rhode Islanders about the most important issues facing the Ocean State today.